NYPD Blue at 8, Forensic Files at 9, and The System at 10. Join the investigation tonight on Court TV.
Let's go to the final part of J.Tom Morgan's rebuttal closing argument.
Ladies and gentlemen, there was a coercive culture of corruption in the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department from 1997 to the year 2000. We, the citizens of DeKalb County, are here to ask you, the citizens of Dorsey County, for justice. For those of us who were growing up here in Albany, in 1961, we remember a significant event that summer. As a small child standing on Slappy Drive, I thought I was watching a parade walk by. I did not realize I was watching history go down the street. At the end of that march, in Kiowa Baptist Church, Dr. Martin Luther King said, if justice is not for everyone, then there can be no justice for anyone. If justice is not for everyone, there can be no justice for anyone. Ladies and gentlemen, there must be justice for the good men and women of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department who were demeaned when they had to perform personal tasks for their boss, the sheriff. There must be justice for the taxpayers of DeKalb County who were robbed of the good work of their government employees when a corrupt sheriff had the employees working in his private business. There must be justice for the citizens of DeKalb County who were denied their right to vote, their right to be represented by a sheriff of their choosing when a man so consumed with power had the rightful sheriff assassinated. There must be justice for the family of Derwin Brown, for Phyllis Brown, who lost a loving and caring husband of 23 years, for the Brown children, who lost a caring father, for the Brown grandchildren, who lost a devoted grandfather, for Derwin's mama, who lost a son. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, there must be justice for Derwin Brown. A man who saw wrong, tried to right it. A man who was not scared to take on the unbeatable foe, but pay the ultimate price for having done so. A man who challenged corruption with honesty and integrity in 3 days before he was to take office as sheriff. He was viciously gunned down in his front yard while his family waited for him on the inside. He was gunned down because one man who had taken oath to uphold the law broke that law. Because one man was so consumed with power, he could not give it up. Ladies and gentlemen, justice demands a verdict of guilty on each and every count in this case. Thank you very much.
This jury deliberated for some 3 days. On the third day at approximately 11:45, they said that they had verdicts on all of the counts except the first one. That was the murder count. The judge sent them back to deliberate at approximately 2:45 p.m., only 3 hours later, for a total of 19 hours of deliberation. The jurors came back and returned these verdicts.
We, the jury, find the defendant as to count 1, guilty. As to count 2, guilty. As to count 3, guilty. As to count 4, not guilty. As to count 5, not guilty. As to count 6, guilty. As to count 7, guilty. As to count 8, guilty. As to count 9, guilty. As to count 10, guilty. As to count 11, guilty. As to count 12, guilty. As to count 13, guilty. As to count 14, guilty. As to count 15, not guilty. Signed and dated.
And so what this verdict really means is that the defendant, of course, is found guilty of the murder charge. He is found guilty of the racketeering charges. And when you look at all of the guilties, the not guilties, interestingly enough, are the counts that relate to Shirley McMichaels. So obviously the jury made an assessment that they did not believe her testimony, that she really was coerced, that there was bribery involved in her relationship with the Speedy Bonding Company, and for that little bit of satisfaction, I guess, for the defense team, that they know that Don Samuels at least knows that her credibility had been destroyed. It's an interesting way these jurors worked. These jurors worked the way I think jurors should always work. They worked from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. They were not sequestered, but they were not allowed to leave the courthouse. Their meals were brought in, and they worked tirelessly. And that's just the way I think it should be done. You may have different feelings about that, but it certainly is a contrast to other juries we have seen recently. Robert Simmels, this was a case where I think because the prosecution had joined so many other counts to this murder count, that the other counts proved up the murder count, even though perhaps it should not be that way.
Well, that's right, and I think that that was the theory all along. If you can prove the basic racketeering and the misuse of the office, then you have your motive to why he would kill him. If he was getting away with all this, if the new sheriff was to root out corruption, then who's he going to go after? The prior sheriff. And all of these other counts, as you say, the racketeering counts proved up the murder.
Yeah, indeed they did. I want to show you how big this case was down there because my wonderful field producer, Michael Christian, was kind enough to bring these home for me and us, all of us. This is one. This is Why Dorsey Went Down. Absolutely huge. That's the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. To be followed yet again. This is Dorsey guilty. This is big, big stuff, as you can see, the Atlanta Herald. And finally, and there were many more, but of the three I'm giving you, this is the Telegraph, Macon Telegraph, Dorsey guilty in sheriff slang. This was a huge, huge case. And certainly, Robert Simmels, this is a case where J.Tom Morgan, he put it on the line. He's the person who made that deal I didn't like, that double immunity deal. But obviously, his bet paid off.
It absolutely did, and it was, as you say, a bad deal, but a deal that worked out for him in the end.
Indeed it did.
And his saying so to the jury and his remarks to the jury obviously sort of gave credibility to the whole deal because he's there talking to them.
Yeah, he's good. He's very, very good. All these lawyers were good. And we will see because it's never over until it's over. It's time for us to go down to the Court TV News Center, and then we'll be back with more.